Is up, alien army? I am Oculus, the alien next door, purveyor of esoteric lore, and we're just going to jump right into today's topic, which are the different types of demonic entities that infiltrate the third dimensional plane. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is what I like to refer to as the single-celled amoeba type. Now, keep in mind that when I talk about demonic entities and energies, these energies are far more advanced than anything that we could possibly see solely on the third dimensional plane. But the best way that I can describe this one is like a single-celled amoeba, because it's essentially a roiling mass of dark energy. And this is energy that I view as somewhat of like a fog or like a dark cloud that might linger over someone, and it doesn't really have like a personality that you can feel or see or notice in it. It's just essentially like a mass of energy. Now, this energy is very oppressive, and it's somewhat like a quicksand where all it wants to do is just drag you down and bring you into that cloud. So if you picture a tornado, how a tornado is spinning and spinning, it's not exactly like the tornado, but if you picture the outside of it, right? A tornado is spinning and it looks like this, but you see the outside of it, and like cows and cars and things are all flying into it, right? Because the tornado is drawing that energy into and unto itself, and things just get caught up in it. That's the best way that I can describe this sort of single-celled amoeba type of demonic energy. Now, you can sense this when all of a sudden you have a feeling of dread, or you have an uneasy feeling that you are being watched and you're not necessarily sure like from who or from where or for anything like that. It'll just be an overall sense of dread. It will be like it'll feel like a very heavy gravity is pulling you down and trying to whoosh, bring you down and suck you down into the depths of what it is. It can be likened, again, as I said, to a tornado. What this is just a mass of energy that wants to just bring everything into it and sort of consume it in its vortex of evil. So the next one that we have, what I like to refer to as parasitic demonic energy, is what's going on with the parasites is that these are differentiated, whereas the single-celled amoeba types, they are not differentiated. Like every type of fear or negative emotion is sort of embedded in that. These are more specific because they are parasites, so they are feeding off of different types of lower vibrational energy. So these can happen. These are attached to like people, okay? And this is really what they're doing, is they're feeding off of the individual. They're feeding off of their fear-based energy, their fear-based emotions. Now, I picture these as somewhat of a mosquito, because when you picture a mosquito, what's happening is that the mosquito is basically drinking the blood from the host, right? But at the same time, what's happening is that the mosquito is injecting its own sort of poison into the host as well, which is what causes that mound, which is what causes that mosquito bite. So these parasites can be likened to that, because when they are feeding on a host, they're feeding energetically, but they're also injecting into that host some of their own energy. Now, these are attracted, let's say, from what is conveyed to me, these parasitic demonic energies and entities, they each thrive off of like a separate emotion. So one might have multiple of these parasites attached to them, but they're all feeding off of a different emotion. Okay, so that's the difference between these and the single-celled amoebas, where it's just every emotion sort of rolled up into one. These are specific. They're picking and choosing what type of energy that they want to feed off of. So it can be anguish, guilt, pain, all types of things, okay? Sorrow, jealousy, any type of lower vibrational energy that you can picture, they are feeding off of it. And there might be multiple feeders attached to one host. These typically happen when someone experiences something that is very, very traumatic to that individual, what happens is that when that trauma occurs, now it's blasted open. That person is sort of a target, right? Like, because if something traumatic happens to that individual, no matter what it is, right? For someone, a paper cut can be traumatic. Okay, so just, you get what I'm saying with these examples here. But when something highly traumatic and fear-based, anguish-based, something occurs, right? Something that occurs within that individual. Now they're opened up essentially because the emotion is so raw in that instant that it attracts these parasitic demons. Okay, it's sort of like moths to a flame, because in that one moment of anguish, the anguish from that trauma is so deep that it just immediately bypasses every other type of emotion. It bypasses even an ego block. The ego is essentially shattered, but it's not shattered in a way where now enlightenment is going to happen, at least not in that moment. It's shattered in a way where there's absolutely somewhat of an opening. It's like the eggshell that was cracked before it was time for the bird to hatch. That's the best way that I can describe it. Okay, so we have those, and then they attach depending on what that emotion is, and then their only intent is to feed off of that energy. So a lot of times people that are considered to be toxic individuals, not in all cases, but in some instances that I've heard of, that I've personally observed, you can sense this type of demonic energy around them, these parasites. This is someone who will tend to victimize themselves, just because they themselves subconsciously, on a level that they do not know, are being victimized. They're being fed off of by these parasites. So these can be someone who is likened to like an energetic vampire, and essentially what they're doing, they're trying to compensate by robbing energy from other people, because on some level they are aware that their own energy is being robbed from them. So then we have what I like to call the jesters, or the lone wolves. Now, these are more personality, what I like to consider personality type of demonic entities, and these really come through when someone is, the person can be astral projecting, they can be practicing like fourth dimensional arts or dabbling in the occult, and if they have not yet built up the awareness of what different energy feels like, they can be a prime target for these type of jesters or lone wolves. And they just see an easy way into the third dimensional plane, and they see that opening. Like, let's say when I was first getting onto my spiritual journey, I've encountered these just because I didn't really have like the grasp that I do now of what these different energies feel like. And so if you open up that doorway because of your study in the occult or something of that nature, and occult can be anything from giving a tarot reading to astrology, or something that you're looking elsewhere for an answer that is found in the third dimensional plane, if that makes sense. Okay, so let's say you're doing tarot and you open up a doorway, it's going to happen that one of these might sneak in, playing with the Ouija board as well. You're seeking an answer that you want on the third dimensional plane, but you're seeking for it elsewhere, but you don't necessarily have that guard up where you're seeking it from a specific source. So that's how these can jump in there, and they see a door slightly ajar, and they're like, okay, I'm going in. Now, next we have what I refer to as the Satanic Mafia, which these I have a lot of videos on, but I'm just going to touch on it a little bit. Now, these are orchestrated, these are controlled, these have different hierarchies, these are the entities that govern the fourth dimensional plane, and these are ones that have actually taken an oath to essentially do Satan's will on the fourth dimensional plane and on the planes lower. So that would be 3D, 2D, 1D, whatever. And these are very highly orchestrated. I just refer to them as a Satanic Mafia because they have a system. They don't typically go around a person unless they are invited in, whereas the other types, they just kind of see an open doorway. But the Satanic Mafia is more controlled, so they want to be invited in. So I will get more into these in my next video.